Hi, my name's Sam, and I'm going to do a scotch review for you. I'm going to be reviewing the Glendronach 12-year. Got this as a gift about a month ago. Opened it a couple weeks ago. Have had a few glasses already. This is the whiskey itself. Very wonderful, dark color. 12 years old. 43% alcohol. It says on here, I don't know if it says on the bottle, but it says that it's not chill filtered. And it also says that it's matured in a combination of Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso sherry casks. So, sort of in the same vein as like Bunnahabhain 12-year is the most notable sherry whiskey that I've tried. So, I've been letting this sit for about 15 minutes. So, I have this glass. It's a snifter. It's not a Glencairn glass again. But hoping that the tapered mouth there sort of works a bit better than some of the other glasses that I have. So even like holding it out here, I can sort of get whiffs of it. It's got a very strong sherried nose, like immediately upon opening it. And it's interesting contrasting it with the Bunnahabhain 12-year, which I've had a handful of times. Because Bunnahabhain has that very strong sherried nose. And I think it's interesting because, and I don't think I would pick this up if it didn't say so on the bottle, but there's a difference between the two. Like, I feel like I can notice a difference, and the difference seems to be that this one's a bit sweeter, and I'm thinking that's that's coming from the Pedro Jimenez casks that this has been aged in. I just got to try some Pedro Jimenez sherry a couple months ago, and I don't know if it's something that I would buy, but if you haven't had it, it's very interesting. It's my understanding is that they raisinate the grape, so they let them sit out in the sun and essentially turn into raisins, and they make wine out of that, and so it tastes like raisins, and it's very sweet, and it was really good, but it was very sweet. So it's quite different from Oloroso sherry, which I also got to try some pretty good Oloroso sherry at this tasting at a liquor store down the street. Oloroso sherry, if you haven't had that, has got a very distinct smell and taste, which I think is pretty well summed up with Bunnahabhain. And you get a lot of it in this one too. It's kind of this like nutty, very rich flavor. It's because the wine has been oxidized, so it doesn't taste like wine. But I really like Oloroso sherry. So of course, having a Scotch that tastes a bit like Oloroso sherry or smells like Oloroso sherry is pretty cool. So as far as the nose goes, I mean, it's really that sherry is like up front and center. There's a bit of spice to it. It's hard to put my finger on exactly what it is, but maybe like clove or cinnamon. But it's very light. It may be just because it sort of reminds me of like a baked good. So you think of like a spice cake or something. But it sort of has like a spice cake, sort of like a cake kind of aroma to it. Also, not this time, but in times past, I've sort of picked up like a coconut, almost like a pina colada kind of aroma. It was just sort of fleeting. It was really nice. This time it just sort of, I wouldn't say I'm getting that very strong, but yeah, it's a lot of that sherry, almost like overwhelming. I haven't put any water in it yet. So one tricky thing I've found with this so far is that it's hard to tell how much water to put in. Again, it's 12 years, it's 43%, so it doesn't need a lot of water, like you can drink it straight. I've put a small amount of water in before, I'll put in 1 spoonful now, just to let it open up a bit. When I first tried it, I was really amazed at how smooth it was. Since the first time I've tried it, I don't know what's happened, but it's kind of seemed, and I don't think it's anything that's changed in the whiskey, but it seemed to have gotten a bit more bite to it. I'm trying to figure out how to like let it simmer down. A couple days ago, I had a glass and I let it sit out, or I was sharing it, and it ended up sitting out for almost an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it still had a bit of bite to it, which I thought was kind of strange. Thank you. So the whiskey itself is very nice, very smooth, very rich. The sweetness of the nose, it's not quite as sweet on the palate as it is like maybe you would expect from the nose. It's sweet, but it's not overwhelmingly sweet. It's not terribly different from the nose. A lot of sherry. I don't find it to be terribly complex, but maybe I should give it a bit more time and give it a couple more glasses. Kitty's being very noisy. It definitely has that rich, nutty sort of flavor to it. No like individual flavors are really coming out. Also in the past I've sort of gotten a hint of pineapple. Again, sort of a fleeting thing, but it was very nice. It was very interesting. Some banana esters. Also, it tends to, I found that the sherry influence tends to burn off after a little while. And the whiskey itself sort of has like a sort of sourness to it that is reminiscent of Tobermory. I had a bottle of Tobermory last summer, which is a very sour sort of tropical fruit kind of whiskey. And I get that in a lot of whiskeys. Maybe that's just me. But after a little while, after a lot of the cask influence either wears off or I sort of become accustomed to it, I find that a lot of whiskeys sort of have this tropical sourness to them, especially the younger ones, especially like 12 years, which I primarily buy 12 years. So maybe it's just more a factor of the whiskeys that I buy. I'm already smelling that a little bit. It sort of reminds me of like a passion fruit kind of aroma or taste. I'm going to put a couple drops more water in here, just sort of as an experiment. I would hate to drown this, but I'm kind of curious to see like where it might go with a bit more water. This is like one of the cool things that I find about whiskey is that there's sort of this, it's a bit of trial and error, right? You're kind of just trying things out, and each time you're always kind of shooting for that optimal spot where it tastes really, really good. And sometimes you find it and sometimes you don't. And when you do find it, it's really awesome. So I think that sherry is kind of, I think I'm just becoming accustomed to it. Maybe like starting to ignore it a bit. I found that it's very approachable. It's always nice to have an approachable whiskey. I have no qualms with easy approachable whiskeys. I feel like there's some complexity here that maybe I'm just not picking up on. I have to drink it a couple more times. So like the last whiskey that I reviewed was the Deanston's, when those are the last bottles that I had, so the Virgin Oak and the 12-year. And I found that this is as approachable, if not more approachable, than those whiskeys, as long as you like that sherry flavor. I found that there's not much. I mean, the finish is standard. Like, it doesn't linger too long. I have a glass of water to cleanse my palate. I like to do that. I find that I become sort of accustomed to whiskeys if I just drink them repeatedly. But take a couple sips of water in between, kind of notice more things, pick up on more things. So I tend to do that. I tend to have a big old jar of water sit right next to me. It certainly is very smooth, and there's something to be said for that. So I think I'll leave the review there. I mean, it's a very nice whiskey. The sherry's very nice. I'd say I like to think of whiskeys in terms of the season that I might drink them in, and I think this is pretty solid autumn whiskey, even though it is springtime here and the trees are blooming. So it's kind of maybe the wrong season for my little system, but I could see this as being a great whiskey to drink on a fall evening by the fire. But I also wanted to talk about something else, sort of about like why I drink whiskey, why I've started making these reviews. And I mean, I'm making videos of these reviews, but it's kind of just making a video of what sort of goes on in my head when I'm drinking whiskey, and why I enjoy it so much. I think the really cool thing about Scotch in particular, but just about tasting in general, and I think it's unfortunate that tasting has sort of this snobbish air about it, because I just don't think it should. But Scotch is really wonderful because it's something that really lends itself to paying attention. I think there's something really different between like just slugging back a shot of whiskey and then sitting down and taking the time. And I think it's because you're paying attention to it. You're sort of getting as much out of it as you can. And the more attention you pay to it, the more you get out of it. It really rewards a great deal of attention, paying attention to your senses and refining them in a sense. I read a book, a pretty well-known book, a couple months ago called Flow. It's by a Hungarian researcher named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And the book details this idea in psychology called flow that he's famous for formalizing. And one of his main arguments is that pretty much any human activity can be a source of flow. And flow is, there's a formal definition for it that I don't really know, but essentially you're putting all of your attention into doing something, and you are at a point of difficulty where it's not so difficult that you're having a terrible time, but it's not so easy that there's no challenge to it. So you're doing something that's challenging. You have to you're paying attention to it, and you're getting immediate feedback is another thing. It's maybe not important in this case. But he goes on to, the whole book is about how there are things like chess masters go into a state of flow when playing sports. Really great athletes, or even not great athletes, are in a state of flow. And then how there are things that you can do with attention, you go into a state of flow, things that you don't do with attention, they're kind of mindless. And I think drinking is one of those things where you can do it mindlessly, or you can put attention into it and take sort of a bit of a meditative stance, and you get a whole lot out of it. You want to drink to get drunk, that's fine. I think drinking with the intent to put attention into something and get out from it as much as you can is like a much more wise thing, especially if you're going to spend $50 on a bottle of liquor. And I found it to be really rewarding so far. And I hope I can do it for a long time. And I come to think of it as sort of as preposterous as this might sound, but it's like a form of meditation. Maybe not something that's going to bring you to nirvana, but it's a way of, focusing your mind, focusing on one thing. You have this sort of interesting thing right here before you, and you try to push everything out of the way, and you focus entirely on this, and you go on sort of a small sort of journey or whatever, where you just pay attention. That's all you're doing. You're just stopping, you're paying attention, and you're paying attention to one thing. And this just happens to be something that a lot of effort has been put into. So take it or leave it. That's the way I'm trying to think about things, especially when it comes to drinking scotch. Well, and one of the things that, of course, sort of inspired me to make these videos is watching videos by people like Ralphie, who has cultivated this expertise in doing something as mundane as drinking a glass of scotch. I mean, it's like sort of amazing to watch him sometimes, how much attention and effort he puts into drinking a glass of scotch. And it's obvious that he's not faking it. This is someone who's, and yeah, he's not the only one, but this is someone who's cultivated a huge amount of knowledge and expertise, not only around the history and the geography and the art of making scotch, but also his senses and getting as much out of a glass of scotch as you can, which is pretty cool. And if only we could apply that sort of brilliance to everything we did in our lives, it'd make life a lot more interesting. So, it's been a couple minutes, been about almost 15 minutes. I find that it's pretty similar. I haven't noticed too many changes. Still that rich sherry flavor, aroma. Bit of that pineapple. It's very nice. It's very good. And not so much for the burn this time. So I think putting that extra bit of water in there, maybe letting it sit for a bit longer, really cooled things off. So close things up. Glendronach 12-year. Very nice, sherry heavy whiskey. Drink it in the autumn, or the spring, the summer, the winter. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm Sam. This is my review.